Good evening and God bless you, my dear brothers and sisters in Christ. We want to welcome you to our town hall meeting tonight entitled Justice for All. We're grateful for the presence of each and every one of you tonight, and we are grateful that we have in the house with us tonight to share, to open our minds and just give us some varying aspects on where we are and what's going on. We want to welcome to our platform tonight Trustee James Harris and Sister Jazmine Parker. We are grateful for both of them. I tell you, I enjoy speaking with them so much. They have such a fresh dialogue and insightful view on the times in which we live now. And we all know that we are in some unusual days. And tonight, we want to just have dialogue. We want to share. We want to talk. It is my concern that our community, that we live without fear, that we understand what our rights are, and just because someone's barking really loudly, that doesn't mean that you have to compromise your rights. It's easier to take a stand when we understand what it is that we can stand on. We can stand on the Word of God, and we can stand on the rights that our parents, our foreparents, fought so hard for us to be able to live in and to be able to walk in. So on tonight, we're going to hear some fresh ideas. We're going to hear some great dialogue. We're going to hear some great opinions. I'm going to ask some starter questions for both of our facilitators tonight. And for all of you who are joining us tonight on Facebook, those of you who are on Facebook in particular, if you have questions or comments, you can drop them in the chat. I'll make sure that our facilitators get your questions. You can communicate with us right here by simply typing your question there, and we will do our best to get it answered on tonight. And those of you who are joining us on both Facebook and YouTube, we want you to share us. Share us right now. Invite your family, invite your friends to come on and be a part of this informative gathering on tonight. We've got some ground to cover. We've got some great points to deal with, and we want all of us to be a part. We want all of us to be informed, and we want all of us to just be on point, not only with what we say, but also with what we think. We're going to cover a number of topics tonight. We're going to talk about politics. We're going to talk about the future. Facilitators, I even want to make sure that we talk for a little while tonight about media and free press and black press in particular, and some of the other issues that our viewers might raise on tonight. So this is a town hall meeting, but we are the Mount Calvary Missionary Baptist Church, which means that everything we do, we open it up with prayer first. So let us go before the Lord in prayer. Eternal God, we again say thank you. We thank you, God, for this day. We thank you, God, for life, health, and strength. We thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to exchange information, to exchange knowledge and wisdom. For you say in your word that your people perish for lack of understanding. So, God, we ask that tonight that everything we discuss would take us closer to a space of understanding. Lord, we know that you have not given us a spirit of fear, so we shall not be afraid. We shall stand, we shall walk, we shall march, we shall protest. Our voices shall be heard. Bless our facilitators on tonight as they share what you have given them. Bless every viewer on tonight as they come with questions and even concerns. Now, God, use us that we might build your kingdom here on earth. This is your servant's prayer in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. All right. I cannot assume and will not assume that everyone knows our facilitators personally tonight. So I'm going to ask that they would begin simply by telling us, introducing themselves, giving us a little brief description about themselves. And I'll start it this way. The team that we have tonight, they're more than just brothers and sisters in Christ. They were also educator and student at the state's great Montclair State University. So at this time, I'm going to ask Sister Jazmine Parker, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about your passion in terms of social justice. Let us hear from you.
Thank you. I'm Jazmine Parker. I am a longtime born and raised citizen of East Orange resident. I have a degree in family services, so I am a social worker with the state of New Jersey. I'm a advocate, educational and parental advocate, and I am passionate about politics. I've worked the elections for 18 years, and I am truly passionate about having people educated and involved in terms of politics and social justice. And I'm happy to be on this platform.
Thank you so much. Trustee, Dean, President James Harris, please.
Good evening, and giving praise and honor to the Almighty. I'm so glad to be here. Just a little bit about me. I was born and raised until I was 16 years old in North Carolina to sharecroppers. And we moved to North Jersey. For the first time in my life, I went to school with white kids and black kids in the same school. I graduated from Southside High School, which is now Malcolm X Shabazz High School, and was lucky enough to get accepted to Montclair State University, where I graduated with my BA degree, and was fortunate enough to get a free ride to get my master's degree, and continued at NYU with another master's degree. I've been involved with the NAACP leadership at some point or another for the last 50 years. I served 8 years as the president of the state NAACP. And my passion is education, because we were told when my parents, neither one of them graduated from elementary school, but they said, you get your education because that's the one thing that nobody can take away from you. And I just feel fortunate that I can share some of the knowledge and experience that I have. And I am extremely devoted to making sure that people understand their rights and responsibilities as citizens in a democratic society called America.
Thank you both. Thank you both. Um, let's get started. So you would have to literally be from another planet not to see the turmoil that the country is in right now. A turmoil that frankly goes beyond an election day. A turmoil that goes beyond um, an inauguration day, but a turmoil that I think has been something simply brewing under the surface of this country for a long time. Brother James Harris, you mentioned that you are the son of sharecroppers. Sister Jazmine, you are X generation
Millennial.
millennials. So there's about two or three generations separating us. And I want to begin tonight by talking about Brother James Harris. Share with us what your experience has been I know you're very involved in civil rights movement, but even bigger than that, you lived it as a child. Share with us your experience transitioning from Deep South, being the child of a sharecropper, and ultimately ending up where life would lead you in education and even in political activism.
As a history major at Montclair State, I realized that sharecropping was an extension of slavery. Black folks did not own property, so they were told on Emancipation Day that they could stay, but they owned hardly anything. So they stayed on the properties of the former slave masters, and they were treated as slaves. We worked hard, sun up to sundown. There was no pay at the end of the day. You got paid seasonally. But one of the things that was very difficult was going to school every day because my parents needed us, my nine, 8 brothers and sisters, to help harvest and plant the crops. But many people kept their kids out of school in order to harvest the crops. And so black folks were at the back of the row. But the schools were totally segregated. The books that we got at my school were the books that the white kids sent over to the black school. There was no equality. All of the teachers were black in the black schools, and all of the teachers in the schools, white schools, were white. So, as we celebrated the 60th anniversaries of the Edmunds Pettus Bridge just yesterday, Bloody Sunday, that was all about the right to vote. And the folks in the South understood that if black folks got the chance to vote, that they were going to lose power. And so Frederick Douglass' statement that power concedes nothing without a demand ought to be ringing in our ears today. People don't give up power. You have to take it. You have to demand it. And if you get complacent in being subservient, you're not going to move beyond that. And I'm so happy that we're having this conversation with the church, because that notion about God is not install fear in us. If we have faith, we ought to be able to move beyond fear and to recognize that we have to put a lot of energy. Freedom is not free, never has been. Ever since we got here in 1619, we've had it hard. So we have to really embrace that. But growing up in the South and moving to the North, I found that black folks had opportunities in the North, but they were integrated opportunities of segregation. In the South, you go to some places in the South and you can find sections of the black town that's owned and operated in black folks. When you move to New Jersey, black folks are scattered all over the city, the county, and so it's not segregated the same way. Although in recent history, we've become more resegregated than we were perhaps in 1960s. At Malcolm X Shabazz High School, there are no white kids in that school today. Zero. In Campus High School in East Orange, there are no white kids in that school. If you go to Irvington High School, there are no white kids in that school. There used to be white kids when I first got here in the 60s, but after the riots in Newark, the white folks moved out and left the Latinos, the Puerto Ricans, and of course in Newark, the Portuguese didn't go anywhere. They're still coming. But that's the experience that I've had. I've seen it. I've been in the military. I've been in corporate. Everywhere I've been, there's racial discrimination, not based on intelligence, based on skin color. And that's what we really have to appreciate, that we have to always struggle for equity, justice, and equality. Without the struggle, there is no equity, equality, or social justice.
So, Brother Harris, you said something very interesting, and I'm going to put this over to you, Sister Jazmine. You talked about the fact that in Shabazz and in the East Orange, one of the schools in East Orange, there are no white children in those schools. Sister Jazmine, I know that you are a force to be reckoned with when it comes to the East Orange Board of Education. You are actively involved on behalf of your son and on behalf of all children. Um, my question to you is it possible that our education system can still be at or exceed national standards, or even higher than national standards, without the presence of white children.
Absolutely. I think education starts at home. It doesn't start in the classroom. It doesn't start in the East Orange School District, or Irvington School District, or Newark School District. It starts at home. And if home is African American, then that's where you teach and that's where you implement the foundation of what education will look like for your child and for your students. I think we have to get out of the notion that school is the only place that education happens, because we have public libraries, we have museums, we have art galleries, we have the resources. We just have to utilize them. We do not need others to teach us our history. We have the experiences. We have the Dean Harrises. We have the U. We have the Morehouse. We have the HBCUs, and even the primary white schools. There's stuff to be learned from them also. You have to read in between the lines, and you have to want that information, regardless if it's in your face or if it's behind closed doors. You have to go for it. Anything that you want, you have to go for it, and we have to stop using the excuse that, well, the Caucasian Americans are not giving it to us. We have the resources. We have all of the technology that we're using for many other things and platforms. We have to be able to educate ourselves on the information that we want from that as well.
Thank you. Um, on that topic, there's a very good book. I'm just about done with. Should be done with it tonight. If you want to add it to your reading list, it's a worthwhile read. It's called "How We Can Win" by Kimberly Jones,
Hmm.
and in it she talks about in one of the early chapters. She calls it the white gaze. That affirmation that many of us look for from the other community. We want them to look at upon us with a level of approval that tells us what we're doing is okay. And Brother Harris, I think the frightening thing about that is when we look at the schools, and you mentioned libraries, and the very fact that this government and this country is going back metaphorically to burning books. Talk to us about how important it is to understand that we have to be self-affirming people and not look for affirmation from the oppressor.
Well, just because you burn the books doesn't mean you burn the history. And it's the history that we need to teach, not about the book. It's about the history. Nobody can deny that slavery was a fact, a peculiar, vicious institution that existed in this country from 1619 to 1863. New Jersey was the last state in the United States of America to abolish slavery. So what that really means is that the information is there. And as Jazmine just said, we have to access that information and share it with people who need to know. And let me say this, my passion is that people who have the information needs to feel a responsibility to share it with people who need the information. I don't blame young people for not knowing their history because we didn't teach it. But that means that we have an opportunity to wherever we are. The same thing I feel about prayer. They say you can't pray in school, but nobody told you that you couldn't pray at home before you send your child to school. And so we need to come to grips with what is in our hands and how can we use that which we do own to motivate, to stimulate, and to protect in our own society. Because for those folks who think that white is right, stay tuned.
Absolutely.
Stay tuned because this administration is going to go after any and everything that is specifically designed to advance people of color and poor people. Any and everything. So I think what we really want people to take from this conversation is you have rights, but you also have responsibilities. Don't throw your rights away because it may be uncomfortable. It may inconvenience you. It doesn't take that much time to go to the polls and vote. In fact, now you don't even have to go to the polls. You can vote by sending in a ballot. but
Mhm.
we got to engage.
Mhm.
Uh, I go past schools in certain neighborhoods, and it's interesting to me that the Latinos are there to pick their children up. Black folks, some of them don't pick their kids up. The kids get home the best way they can, and that's problematic. You have to go inside and see but you got to talk to the children too, because they will tell you whether they had a good day in school or whether they didn't have a good day. They will tell you whether or not they feel like they were treated fairly or not treated fairly. They will tell you whether or not, when they raised their hand, that whether the teacher called on them or they called on somebody else who, only had their hands up once. If we want our community to advance, we have to really be engaged in protecting, encouraging, and advancing our own community.
Thank you. And that notion of advancing our own community. Sister Jasmine, and again, those of you watching, if you have questions, drop them in. We're watching. We'll get your questions answered. We hear this term equality and equity. Certainly, they're not synonyms. Certainly not the same thing. Sister Jasmine, I'll ask you first. Can you just weigh in a little bit on what you believe the differences are between equality and equity? That's part one. And part two, why are both so important?
For me, equality is the being able to start at the same playing field. As a African American young adult, 30, mid 30s now, there's some opportunities that people do not feel as though I should even be privy to because I'm African American, because I'm woman, because I'm a millennial, because I'm under 40. However, I still have the same playing field of someone that's Caucasian, someone that's Hispanic, and I should still be able to get the same jump start. And that's equality. Equitable is to be able to say, this is how it's interchangeable and this is how we're going to go. In terms of how it's important right now, we see everything that's going on with DEI right now. We see how it's affecting not only the big businesses, but also the smaller businesses. We see that this administration is trying to remove schools that have a DEI, they're not going to get funding. And it's going to affect more than just our Targets, more than our Amazons. It's going to affect little and big things such as WIC, such as SNAP benefits. And we have to be aware that there's changes that's going to happen, but we cannot use DEI or any other thing that was a platform to advance us to prohibit us. We are still equal. We are still human. We are still educated. We are still powerful. And we have to stop looking for what can be considered a handout. And we have to just go into the room and command the room because we have the knowledge. We see that. And as an African American young woman, we are typically the most educated. So we don't necessarily need DEI. We just need to be able to get ourselves to the door. And with those opportunities, we have to not only command it, we have to not only respect ourselves and respect the information that's there, but we also have to be able to share it so that it's not just a room for myself, it's a room for my sisters, for my brothers, my cousins, and whomever else are actually equipped to be in that room. We don't want any handouts from anyone just because we're Black. We don't want handouts because we're under 40 or we're in the church or we're in the schools. We want what we rightfully deserve because we are worthy of it and we are definitely highly educated, highly functional, and we are going to perform at the level of capability that we have.
Now, you mentioned something interesting, and that is you talked several times about being even. Um, Brother Harris, where do you stand on the fact that is the playing field right now? Is it really even? Number one, and number two, do you see a concerted effort to really rig the game? I mean, it's in my opinion, it's been rigged forever, and now it's getting there's a concerted effort to make it even worse. Tell me where you stand on that.
Well, let me follow up on what Sister Jasmine was saying. Distinction we make between equality and equity is they're similar but different. If you have a bus with 30 people on it, if you give everybody on the bus equal, then everybody is still in the same place. But with equity, we're talking about giving people the opportunity to move to the front of the bus because they've been in the back of the bus. So for a long time, we lived with equality, but now we're talking about equity. We don't want people who already have money to get an equal amount of money. We want the redistribution of some of that money to people who don't have it. And that's where the rubber meets the road of resistance. There are people who don't want us to move forward. There are people like us who don't want us to move forward because somehow or another they think that if everybody from the back of the bus gets in the front of the bus, they're not going to have a seat. There's a place in front of the bus for everybody. And if there's not, get another bus. But, we've moved from this notion of affirmative action, equal opportunity. And what happened with that, and I've lived through it from this very beginning to the present, is that white women and LBGT people were getting more opportunities using affirmative action. And so then they came up with this DEI. But make no mistake about it, when they've turned that term into giving unfair advantage to Black folks and poor people. That's what DEI is, because white folks ain't talking about missing out on anything. They've, this current culture has come up with certain terms that are dog whistles for something else. When you say urban, you're not seeing white people. When you see urban, you see low income, violent, low performing schools. And folks fund those things to keep them that way. You can't buy a house in Montclair unless you have a certain amount of money. But previously, you couldn't buy it even if you had the money because they redlined it. The realtors would tell people, you don't want to live down South End because, those are Black people down there. And if you move down there, things are going to happen. It's not going to be safe. It's not going to be, when in fact, some of the Black folks in the South End of Montclair have more education and job opportunities than some of the people in Upper Montclair. But that's not what they talk about. They make it believe that everybody's in the same situation. And I might say that one of the things that if you want to look at progress, all you got to do is look at education. When I moved from North Carolina, the only way you got to go to school was either you had the money or you got a scholarship. After Dr. King got assassinated in 1968, EOF came along. Now today, anybody who wants to go to college can go to a college. Essex County College is open admission. All you have to do is apply and you can go. But again, if you look at institutions like Montclair State, like Keene University, like William Patterson, Princeton, it's still racially segregated. So we just ought to thank and pray God every day for the historically Black colleges like Morehouse that can produce a guy like Ralph M. Branch Jr. or a Spelman that has produced leaders forever. If I'm so happy that the choir is coming to Mount Calvary to see all those young boys singing. And if you were to read their bios, it wouldn't be all people coming from wealthy Black folks. They come from all over the country, from all parts of the earth, in fact, some other countries. But we that whole thing of equality is not something that people intend for us to have. They just don't. Why in the world would people not want us to get an education? Unless education is valuable.
Right.
Why are people trying to keep us from voting? Because voting must be value. Anything that has value, people have tried to keep us from. And we just need to understand that anything that has value, we need to go for it if it's moral and good for everyone.
Right. We have a question in the chat coming from Brother Miller, who says the following: there was a time when Black people learned to watch each other's kids and show up for one another. In your opinion, when did this stop, and how do we reconnect to one another to the point where we can offer our own WIC?
Well, um, one of the things that we used to do, we used to be meet in the church. That's where just about everybody who grew up in the South, Sunday was a special day. I love Sunday because we didn't have to work. We did not work on Sunday. And that's when we got to eat chicken and other stuff and to use the nice dishes. Okay. But what has happened is people have moved away from families. We've separated by geography. A lot of people moved from the South to the North, and the environment for a family get together became more difficult. And so as a result, people have gotten nervous about the neighbor next door because they really don't know the neighbor next door. And in some instances, the community has become unsafe. So if it's unsafe, you kind of lock yourself in and mind your own business, so to speak. We can reconnect that. We can talk to our neighbors, but we have to have a place where we can get together and become comfortable enough that we trust each other. That's where the problem is with trust. I'll let Miss Jazmine keep my child if I think that she's going to take care of my child and keep her safe. But I'm not giving her over to somebody that, may be doing some things that I don't want my child to be exposed to, or if I don't know what her values are. It's a trust level. We can build communities, but it's, the whole thing, it has to be intentional. It can't be for somebody else to do it. We have to take responsibility, personal responsibility to make it happen.
Is that Jazmine?
So first, we have to understand that WIC was formulated by the Black Panther organization. And we have to understand that that was a group of individuals that was looking to empower the Black community. And we have to now be those individuals. It's like a meme going around like, now we are the new aunties and uncles. So who's going to be the new pastor? It's up to us. It's not up to Dean Harris or pastor your generation. It's up to us. And if we're not going to take charge, and if we're not going to do it, then we're going to let it fall by the wayside, and it's not going to happen. In terms of the village, how do we get back to it? We be it. There is a lot to be said about a community. It's not just children that needs villages, it's adults also. So we have to surround ourselves with like-minded people. We have to practice the golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated, and we have to also live out the principles of the Bible. Because if we're living that life, then we are going to be able to say, hey, you know what? Eggs are $15 a dozen or 18 for the 18 count. I bring the eggs, you bring the flour, somebody else brings the butter, and then we can build a cake. But if we think that we can only do it by ourselves, then we are never going to be successful as a community. Yes, you can be successful in your individual household, but truly, how much of advancement is one man to one society if he's not advancing himself or the others? So we have to get out of that mindset that it's only about me, it's only about my household. If you have the resources, if you have the tools, and you know that someone is lacking it, you help them out. It's as simple as that. And that's how we get back to the village. That's how we get back to empowering one another. That's how we get back to being a community. We have to look at one another as a team player. It's another metaphor that you could get far by going someplace alone, or you could get, if you want to fly fast, you go alone. If you want to fly far, then you go with a group, because there is power and there's encouragement. You have to be able to lean on, you are only as strong as your weakest link. And if we continue to think that we are the smartest person in the room, then our rooms are too small. We have to rely on one another. We have to utilize one another's talents, and we also have to strengthen one another's weakness. So if we want WIC programs, if we want SNAP programs, we have to look into the resources that we have, and we have to say, hey, you know what? I can offer advocacy. Dean Harris can offer education. Pastor can offer the sanctuary, and we have to come together and we have to build that thing that we want ourselves, because no one's going to build it for us.
Could it be that one of the things that makes this current administration and the days in which we live right now so devastating? And I'm not talking about economic devastation. I'm not talking about employment. I'm not talking about education. it seems that most of the conversations that I'm involved with directly are coming from a place of emotion and fear. Could it be, and share your thoughts, that this administration has reminded us that you, as you said, Sister Jazmine, you may stand alone and be successful, but at the end of the day, we're putting you all in the same bucket anyway. I wonder how many of us right now are experiencing our feelings are really hurt because they're reminding us that what we thought was their affirmation was never what it was, nor should that be anything that we ever seek. That if we are to affirm, let's affirm one another, let's affirm our own community. Are we disappointed that they are now living out what they've been telling us all along, and now our feelings are bruised? Take it away.
Well, let me remind people that the new administration has been in power for only 60 days.
60 days.
I'm a sprinter as an athlete, and you cannot run at 100-yard dash speed for a mile. This administration is going to run out of juice, but he's scaring the daylights out of folks because he made people think that they were going to deliver something that they never intended to do. But they got people separated. Because remember, this was a close election. 48 versus 52 in a national election is not a mandate. They squeak by. My belief is that when people see how much they thought they owned that's going to be taken away, that they're going to rise up and say, you're not taking my house. You're not taking my car. Because I've worked hard for this and you have no right for it. Musk does not need my Pontiac. Trump doesn't need my house. So I think we're about to see a major, major revolution, if you will. Take a look at what the college students are doing today in New York. They can claim that they're going to stop kids from protesting, but no, they're not, because they see their education at risk. They're not going to just go away and go and study. They're going to protest. And we ought to remind people that it's been the young people who have been at the forefront of major social movements in this country. When we got to the microphones, the old folks were there, but the folks who pushed us to the microphone was the young people. The lunch counters in the South, the kids who came from the North to do voter registration during the 60s. Those things, and I think that what's so exciting about this conversation is we got a cross-generational conversation going on. I don't expect Jazmine and her peers to approach everything the way we did, because we didn't have the same tools. I'm still trying to find out how to, I took a picture the other day with my cell phone, and I asked the person, is there any film in that camera? And of course, that demonstrated how old I really am. But this new generation hasn't had the same lived experience, but they have the same level of want and need. So they're going to come up with a strategy, and I'm just begging older folks to support, understand, and move with them, rather than trying to tell them that history hasn't been kind, because history is not going to be kind to people who are trying to take power. History will not be kind to people who are trying to take power. I expect that the folks at places like Morehouse and Morgan State and so forth, when they see that their future's at risk, they're not going to go home and start working at Walmart's and ShopRite. They're going to do some things to push back. And the Martin Luther King's philosophy is they can't lock us all up and keep us forever.
Right.
Some of us are going to have to sacrifice, but that's what our history has been. Freedom is not free.
Mm-hmm. Sister Jazmine, you want to jump in on that?
I very carefully this administration is going to bring us, it should bring us closer to God. In troubled times, we should be having these type of conversations, but it shouldn't just be on this platform. It should be with our friends and with our local officials, and it should be a accountability check. Whereas when a person shows you who you are, you got to believe them. That is what Trump and his cabin is doing. And it's unfortunate that it's at the expense of us. However, we have to be able to get the resources that are being given and see the resources that were taken away and figure out how we can implement that and how we can utilize it. We're not using it as an excuse. He's taking education, or he's attempting to take education, and now we have to realize, how can we educate ourselves? When it comes down to him being who he is not the person who has the power. We have our local officials, we have our elected officials, we have our appointed officials, we have our God first and foremost. So we have to be able to say, you know what, as he is doing what he desires to do, which is not for the good of all people, majority of his implementations would not even fly with his own families. We see how he's moving in terms of ICE. We know his history in terms of marriages. If ICE was around at the time that his wives were around, then he would not have been able to have some of those wives. So we have to use the information, and again, we have to read what's not being said, and we have to use that information just as much as we have to read what is being said. I know Dean Harris is referring to freedom is not free, but I am a really big reader, and Zora Neale Hurston says, if you are silent about your pain, then they'll kill you and say that you enjoyed it. We can't be silent. We don't have the opportunity to be silent. I don't have the opportunity to be silent for my son, who is about to be 13, or for my mother, who is in her 60s. I have to stand up, and I have to say, hey, this is not right. And I'm not just going to take no as an answer. I'm also going to take action. I'm also going to talk about it with my friends. I'm also going to post about it with social media. I can post about my favorite song. I can also post about politics, because there's action and there's power within the post. And we have to be able to say, we're not going to let anyone or any circumstances that may be unfortunate circumstance to overrule us. We have to be able to say, hey, you know what? This is just a stepping stone, and we're going to educate, we're going to empower ourselves, and we are going to implement it so that Daryl can see what advocacy looks like. I'm not just doing this for myself. I'm doing this so that he can see it. I'm doing this so that his classmates can see it, and anyone else, because this is not just going to be on my generation as a 30-something-year-old young woman. It's going to be on for the generations to come. And it's also about mentorship. So as I engage with younger people and they're in their 20s and teens, it's about letting them know that you have a voice. You have a seat at the table. And if you feel like you don't have a seat at the table, create your own table. Again, it's about the resources, and it's about coming together to say, hey, I have this, you have that, and we're going to come together and we're going to make our own table. If you know how to hammer and you know how to screw, and I know how to set a table, we got a table right there. But we have to be able to say, we're going to work together. And when we cannot work together, we have to say, hey, you know what? It's about accountability now. Mm-hmm. We see what's happening in the White House. We see what's happening in DC. We see what's happening in the state level. We see what's happening in the county. We see what's happening in East Orange and school districts and every place else. We have to hold our local officials and our even government, we have to hold them accountable, because they truly work for us. And we have to implement that, and we have to also practice it. When we're not getting the things that we want, when we're not getting the things that we need, when our kids are not getting the things that they need and they want, we have to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to hit the phone lines. I'm going to hit social media. I'm going to do the emails. I'm going to do the calls. I'm going to do the snail mail. I'm going to show up to where you are, and we're going to have those hard conversations. Because if the longer we prolong the hard conversations, the worse it gets. Mm-hmm. And we don't have the opportunity to sit up here and let the next 4 years come. We need to be planning for the next 4 years now, because we're already at a downfall. If we're waiting for the next steps, if we're waiting for the next shoe to drop, we're already at a downfall. The shoe's going to drop. It's going to drop. What are you going to do?
Mm-hmm. So You mentioned something very interesting about your own context, how your responsibility is to advocate not only for yourself but for your son, who's a different generation, and even for your mom, which is another generation. Um, it seems to me that there's a lot of talk um, in this atmosphere of fear, let me call it, that some of us only seem to be responding when what's being threatened impacts us directly. So if I'm on Social Security, um, pre-election, I think even in our last town hall meeting, we talked a lot about reproductive rights. And some of the feedback that I got after that conversation and after that segment of our town hall meeting was, well, reproductive rights really don't matter to me because I'm beyond that age. Are we in a space where we don't have the luxury of picking and choosing which points we're going to advocate for or push against, when our goal ought to be pushing against anything that's unjust, whether you think it impacts you directly or not? Do you feel that many of the voices now amongst our community, we only respond when what's being done impacts us directly? I'll be quiet, just don't touch my Social Security check. I'll be quiet, just don't touch my SNAP. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me contextualize some of what we're saying. The major divide that I see in our community is socioeconomic. It's easy to talk about certain things if you're at a certain level of comfort. I tell people when I ride down Bloomfield Avenue to Newark, why do you think most of the people standing at the bus stops are blacks and Latinos? Well, they're at the bus stop because they can't afford a car. And we have in our community now, and we really have to be sensitive to it, we have a very huge, diverse community along education, social, income, but we also have a nationality issue. We've got more and more people coming from other countries to America, and they haven't had the lived experience, so they don't have the same set of priorities or experience that those of us who grew up in the housing projects in Newark have witnessed. In fact, for some of the people who came from other countries, things are real good in America compared to what they were in the country that they left. So, in bringing communities together, we really have to walk through this whole socioeconomic divide, because there are some people who are poor and they think that voting and talking to legislators and doing, going out to volunteer to create educational opportunities or educational programs, they think that they don't have the talents and know how to do that. So they just kind of go along with what it. I would be really interested in knowing, where are most of the people on this at this town hall meeting? Where are they getting their information from on a daily basis? Old folks look at television. Young folks got their cell phones, and they're talking about chat box and all of that stuff. But those of us over 60, that ain't where we're getting our news from. It's ABC, MSNBC. We might listen to WBLS, WLIB, but when you listen to WBLS, you get 60 seconds of news in between the music. How much information can you possibly get? So an important question is, where are people getting their information, and what is that information telling them about their role, responsibility, and power? Because that's what we really need to talk about. Everybody sitting in the pews at Mount Calvary Missionary Baptist Church have power. On election day, consider this. Ralph M. Branch Jr. gets one vote. Jazmine Parker gets one vote. James Harris gets one vote. Ras Baraka gets one vote. Donald Trump only gets one vote. Phil Murphy only gets one vote. McIver only gets one vote. So what is it that's keeping them excited about their power? And what is it that's keeping us from wanting to show them how much power we have to let them stay where they are, particularly if they're not doing what we want them to do? Everybody needs to understand that in a democracy, as unfair as it may look, there's a certain level of equality, and that's on election day. So, I mean, it really hurts my heart as a civil rights activist to hear anybody say, I don't believe my vote counts. Well, what did John Lewis get beat on the head for? What did Dr. King get murdered for? What did Malcolm get murdered for? Because Malcolm was organizing the Black community. So your vote don't count because you choose not to exercise your vote. And leadership matters. If you don't believe leadership matters, look at the White House now and what it looked like 4 years ago, 8 years ago, 4 years ago. Look at the mayor. Look in all the towns. Leadership matters. In East Orange, if you're the mayor, you get to appoint the people on the Board of Education. Appoint them. In Newark, you get to vote for who is going to spend $1.3 billion a year. And if you don't like the education that your child is getting, pick up that phone, go to that principal, go to the Board of Education, go to Mayor Baraka and say, I don't want my money spent the way they're spending it with the Newark Board of Education. I want them to buy some books and do the right thing. So power is in everybody's hand. It just can't be left to those with degrees, those who have decent jobs, and everybody, because the truth of the matter is, most of the Black people in the state of New Jersey are not riding around with a college degree. I know that. When Jazmine Parker graduated from Montclair State, she became a part of a 20% of the Black population in this country. Only 20%. That means 80% of the people that we interact with haven't had the same privilege and opportunity.
You mentioned something very very interesting there, and that is as you talk about, you mentioned the Newark, for example, the Newark education budget being, I think you said 1.3 billion.
$1.3 billion.
And that vote is typically one of the smallest turnouts in the city.
Less than 10% of the people who were eligible to vote showed up.
For 1 point to decide what happens, essentially decide what happens with 1.3 billion. Now, give me your feedback on this, Sister Jazmine. That's something, and my brain is a little old, it's a little worn. I can't think of the writer's name, but this particular writer talks about the trauma of being Black. That we've done some teaching on trauma being literally impacting us on the genetic level. And one of the things she talks about is the fact that because of much of the trauma that we've suffered, that we, how did she put it? We believe more in that which we can touch than what we can conceptualize. So her argument on that was that's why we're more likely to have money in our pocket, but none in the bank, because we can hold what's in our pocket. What's on a piece of paper doesn't mean anything to us. And as she's pressing that point, I further look at what's happening in the stock market right now. That the stock market is dropping. I think today was at an all-time low of 3 years, is what I believe I heard. And many of the people on this call, many of us, you work for companies that have 401ks and whatever your savings vehicle might be in that company. And this is impacting us. Even though it's not taking the $20 you have in your pocket, it's impacting our future. And what we have to be willing to do is we have to take our heads out of the sand on this and I press this with you now, Sister Jazmine, being the youngest of the generations on the line right now. I always talk to our young people. If you have a job and your job is matching funds, 401k, whatever your retirement plan, maximize it. Where do you believe your generation stands in terms of what the future will be, especially in light of what the future looks like right now?
Um, I believe my generation is going to be good. We're going to find a way. We're going to create a way. We're not, I'm a firm believer that my job matches at 4%. So I put 7 in. Because if you match me, then I see by adding more. I'm not a bare minimum person. I believe that it's always higher and it's always more. So I utilize that with my finances. I utilize that with education. I did just want to touch on the fact of the election for the Newark Board of Education. That date is coming up. That date is April 15th. If individuals need to register to vote for that election, they have to register by March 25th, which is just 2 weeks away. Because it's great to know that Newark has an election for the Board of Education, as does Irvington on that same day of Tuesday, April 15th. But you also got to know the deadlines. You cannot go into the election thinking that you're going to vote if you're not registered. And as the city of Newark is being progressive, they allow 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds to vote as well in these elections. Throughout the state, the typical age to vote is 18. So the information is not just that, I can vote, you can vote, Pastor can vote, Dean Harris can vote. It's that if you have a teenager who is 16 and up, they are also allowed to vote in that Newark, only for the city of Newark right now, school board elections. And again, going on, if I only feel hurt by what's happening to my people, that's not true. Because I see what happens to the immigrants right now. And if they are willing to do it to them, then what are they willing to do to me? So this is the time where I have to take action. This is the time that I have to see, okay, you can't treat one person like this and then say that you love me. If you love humankind, you're going to do right by all humankind. It doesn't matter of the race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, sexual orientation. People are people, and understanding that there's rights and responsibility, but you can't hurt my neighbor and then think that you're going to be in good graces with me, because it's only a matter of time that then you will try to take that action on me. And I can't stand for that. If I'm not able to stand up for myself and stand up for my neighbor, then I'm allowing sometimes for that action to be taken. We have to be able to be a safe space for one another. We have to be able to protect one another. Because again, if we're not going to protect ourselves and we're not protecting one another, then who's going to protect us? There's more of us than it is them. And if we come together, and I'm sorry, I'm going to continue to say it, if we come together and if we put our brains together and say, hey, you know what? Women's rights is important to me. And if Dean Harris is saying that, hey, it's not as important to him, and then I break it down to him, hey, you have a daughter, right? If she is not being, if she cannot reproduce, then your bloodline dies. You have to take it away from you and make it, how does it affect the next generation? What do you want your legacy to live on? Because if it's only you, then that's great. And you're going to continue to vote. You're going to continue to talk. You're going to continue to act on only you. But if you realize that there's greater, that there's more, that there's linear lines behind you, then you should be making decisions to plan for them. Again, when it comes down to education, I'm not just teaching Daryl so that he can know what to do right now. You need to have a safety plan. You need to have a safety plan for your education. You need to have a safety plan for your finances. You need to have a safety plan for anything in life, but you have to plan. You have to talk. You have to communicate. You have to educate yourselves. And it's not just, well, I see what they're doing to the LGBTQI community, and that can never happen to us, because that is literally how the civil rights movement was formed, by unfair treatment. And if it's unfair treatment now to the LGBTQI community, then when will it be unfair treatment to the African American women? When will it be unfair treatment to the African American man? When will it be unfair treatment to whomever the denomination or the race may be. But now is the time to take action. If you are an ally, then you're an ally. It does not need to be your race, your gender, your class, your family. If you are believing in the human rights, then you're going to believe in all human rights. It does not matter. You have to be able to say that you're going to stand firm and stand tall on your beliefs, and you have to be able to practice it. You cannot let it happen to you to now say that I want to fight.
Right. We have
Brother
dropped
Grant,
in the chat.
Brother Grant, what
Yes.
does the Bible say about who we should love?
Love one another as you love yourself. You should clothe the naked, feed the hungry, shelter the poor, visit the sick. The Bible is clear that we have a responsibility to community and a responsibility to one another, and that the clarity of that literally begins all the way back in the book of Genesis, where God is living in community with Adam and Eve. And when sin enters, it's sin that destroys the community, because it's at that point that Adam and Eve begin to hide from God, that God no longer walks with them because sin has broken the relationship. And to this day, we see that very same trick of the enemy being utilized against us, where we're being pitted against one another. Sister April Stewart, one of our faithful folk down in Florida, just dropped in the chat, and I'm sure she won't mind me sharing this with you. She indicates that she is a retirement specialist. So any of our younger folk, you're still working, still trying to figure that out, please drop a note to Sister April Stewart, connect with her offline. Listen, this is the only way we're going to survive. And I don't know about you, I don't want to survive. I want to thrive. God sent his son so that we might have life and have it more abundantly. And I'm not talking about material, I'm talking about mentality. So please, younger people, even parents, drop in the chat, connect with Sister April Stewart, retirement specialist. If any of our Leadership Academy folk are online right now, Brother Miller, Sister Tammy, any of y'all are on, drop a note to Sister April, and let's begin to educate even our babies on managing money and understanding the stock market and understanding what all of these indicators mean. Because, and I want to use this as a segue, it is expensive to be poor.
Amen.
It is expensive to be poor, as the poverty line is such it's such a crooked game, a crooked situation, that the poorer you are, the more you pay for car insurance, the higher the interest rates are on everything we buy. Credit cards that are charging what we used to call loan shark interest rates, 35%. I believe it was Dr. Freddie Haynes. I'm not 100% sure, but the other night on Roland Martin's show, as he's describing the community, he talks about usually in the impoverished community no, it wasn't Freddie Haynes, it was someone else. In the impoverished community, you find a check cashing place, you'll find a liquor store, you will find a place where you can rent furniture and rent appliances. And then there's a church in that same neighborhood that makes you feel better about all of the bad choices you just made. And that's impactful, because the game as we see it unfolding, and I throw this ball at you all, is what we see coming out of DC right now. The easy way to label it is brown versus white. But the truth of the matter is that there's some white folks, the majority of them are the WIC people that we're talking about.
That's right.
The SNAP people that we're talking about, Social Security people that we're talking about. These folk are so evil
Mm.
that they don't care who they cut,
Keep going.
because at a certain point, you're either green or something else.
Right.
Talk to us about this notion of how we might empower ourselves economically.
Mm.
Well, you started. I was so impressed the other day when you called everybody who had a business or profession to the front of the room. Did anybody think that we had that many people sitting in the pews of Mount Calvary Missionary Baptist Church that had a business or a profession that they would like to promote? And I think our next step is to make a directory of those folks who came up there, put their name in a directory so that people can get that. And when I want to buy fish, I go to the black person who owns the fish market. When I want to, I'm not going to get my hair done, but if I'm going to buy, it would be really nice. It would be really, really nice if there was a black company that sold beauty supplies. I walk up and down Springfield Avenue, Orange Street and Orange, no, Main Street and Orange, and there's so many beauty supply stores, but not a single one is owned and operated by black folks. Not one that I'm aware. And if you know of one, let me know, because I can tell Justine and Jamila to go
There's
shopping.
one in East Orange.
Well, get that information to us, because we're making these other folks. And I still don't understand why black folks don't know how to do nails and pedicures and manicures. Why do the Asians have a monopoly on that? But the point that I'm trying to make, Pastor Branch, is that we need to get our resources identified so that people know where to connect. Okay, I be very honest. When I do Dunkin' Donuts in Montclair, there are 3 shops. I don't go and buy my anything from the people that don't hire black folks. I refuse to do that. Or I have to go all the way up Valley Road in Upper Montclair because they hire some black folks up there. But these other ones, those folks don't even bring their lunch in our neighborhood.
Absolutely.
They own it and leave. And we've got to, even if it's a bit inconvenient, we need to make the extra effort to enrich and empower our own like other people do.
Absolutely. Jazmine, anything on that?
So I will say in East Orange, we do have a lot of black-owned businesses. Talking about a beauty supply store, one of my good childhood friends' mother owns a beauty supply store on Central Avenue. It is called Sisters. It is near Central Avenue and Hollywood. Go inside there, support it. It's not just us owning the businesses, it's of us supporting the businesses. We do not have to wait for Small Business Saturday to post our businesses, to post our friends, to talk about our businesses. We should be doing it on a continual basis. It should be no reason why we should not highlight our friends. It costs nothing to do a repost. I know some very talented people, not just in the city of East Orange, but throughout the state and throughout some of the East Coast. And even I have family in Chicago that does catering. We have to be able to say, hey, you know what? We're talking about the resources. We're talking about the table. We have to say, hey, you know what? I know an artist. I know a musician. I know this. I know that. And we have to come and collective. And we have to be able to collaborate. If we are not collaborating, then we are not working. So I do not believe in the notion that the small businesses of African Americans are not there. I think that maybe we need to learn how to support them. We need to see them to be more visible in the community. And we need to actually get full-fledged behind them. If we are doing the fast that Pastor Jamal Bryant talked to everyone about in terms of fasting from Target during the season of Lent, then go support your local businesses that's in your town. And if you don't know what businesses are in your town has chambers of commerce. Contact them. Contact your city hall. Find out the businesses. Do a pop-up shop. A lot of towns are doing pop-up shops now. So this is where we say it's not on the business, it's on us. We can go to New York and browse and tour and whatever else that we can do. But do you really know the businesses in your own town? Do you support them? Have you ate at all the restaurants? And even if it's not your style, right? If I'm trying to pay it forward to Dean Harris for doing an awesome job at Montclair State and Mount Calvary and to Pastor, then hey, maybe I need to take you to the Caribbean restaurant that's around the corner. Even if I can't eat the food, but that does not mean that I can't support them in the vision. Because again, it is not about me as an individual, it's about us collectively. So we have to get out of the mindset that it's about me. We have to utilize our resources and our tools and our feet. Walk. You walk your town, you will see some interesting businesses. You will meet some interesting people. You may see the person without shelter that is looking for that cup of coffee. There's a business that has a cup of coffee. You don't always have to support the Dunkin' Donuts and the Starbucks. There's so many other businesses around that you can say, hey, I'm going to support. And by you supporting that and then putting the post up, then we can say, hey, you know what? 50 people viewed that and then 100 people viewed it later on. And now that's more exposure for that business. And especially if you leave reviews. I am a big fan of leaving a review, regardless if it's Yelp, regardless if it's on a company's website, or if I have a good experience, I want to let you know that I'm having a good experience, just like I would like to let you know if I was not having the best experience. Because we tend to only give feedback when it's negative. But what about the good? We have to be able to tell people when they're doing well. We have to be able to encourage and empower people because that's truly all we have. Everyone is fighting some type of battle. Everyone is tired in some type of way. And sometimes we don't know the good things that we're doing if no one is ever recognizing it. Yes, it's one thing for me to recognize it amongst myself, but if I can tell you, Pastor, you're doing awesome in this, that may be the encouragement that you need to remain steadfast, to practice the word. We know that we need encouragement, and we have to be able to not only encourage ourselves, but encourage the businesses, encourage the community. Because if we want the money, if we want the billions of dollars for taxes, then we have to be able to say, hey, we're going to support our local businesses and we're going to pour into them the way that we want them to pour back into us. It's about reciprocation.
I want you all to everyone to check the chat. We've got a lot of Black businesses that are being highlighted, information, and I think it was Minister Gray who just talked about being intentional. Let's make sure that we are supporting these businesses. It's one thing to boycott Target, Amazon, or anything else. But honestly, it doesn't mean much if we just give them the money on Saturday versus giving it to them on Friday. That they already have the assumption that we're coming back. No, let's take that money and let's keep it and put it in the pockets of our own community. Because listen, when we do that, it goes to the next level, and that is businesses that are black and brown owned that are empowered create black and brown owned banks that create black and brown backed loans that create brown and black loaned uh, 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 lower interest rates. And that sounds fictitious, that sounds romantic or even fantastical, but we've had it before. I want us, if you have a chance to do some research, take a look at Black Wall Street.
Mm, mm, yes.
And I want you to, read some of that. Read it, not reels and all that other stuff. Read it, because not only is it history, it also causes us to dream about not what can be, but about what was and what can be again. We've got to begin to, if you look at our church slogan, if you will, on our logo, it says reimagining ministry. We have to reimagine ourselves as a people. We want to we want to start to bring this plane in, but I want to talk for a moment about media. The other night during the state of whatever they called it, Roland Martin gave us an alternative,
Mm.
and I was excited to watch it. In that he shared that his goal was 100,000 viewers, and I think on that night he reached 260,000.
And
And it's really not. That's really not the number of viewers, because when I was in the newspaper industry, we knew that every one newspaper was read by 4 or 5 different people. Just like some of you are watching tonight, you're watching on one device, but there might be 4 or 5 of you watching. So we know that his podcast reached a lot more people than 260,000. The information in it, if you have not seen it, I encourage you to go pull it up on YouTube and watch it. Listen to the bishop's address as Trump was doing what he was doing. You want to listen to that. You want to hear it. As we were going and talking about media for a moment, several of you were dropping in the chat what sources you use for media. In our planning for tonight, one of the questions that came up is, where do most of us get our news from? And Brother Harris, I would dare say I don't even think it's the younger generation. It's all generations. You gotta stop relying on social media as a reliable news source. Hear me carefully. Simply because the reporter on WABC is black or brown, they are still reporting for a white media outlet that's going to control what they say. If you don't believe that, I want you to look at some of the recent firings, look at some of the recent people that have gotten laid off, and also, and maybe y'all can help me with this, why aren't we picking these people up and again creating our own? When I watched Roland Martin and the black and brown perspective of what Trump did, I immediately went to Channel 2, and it was a whole different ball game.
oh yeah.
It was not even like they were talking about the same stuff. So, Brother Harris, from the perspective of remembering perhaps Newark Eagle, we've got positive community even right now that honestly struggles for support.
Yes.
We've got Roland Martin, who literally has to beg for money. Shouldn't have to do that when there's an Oprah Winfrey and Tyler Perry that have checkbooks bigger than I could ever imagine. Brother Harris, talk to us about media as you've known it. Sister Jazmine, talk to us about what your counterparts, your age group, what it is that you consider to be reliable media outlets.
If you use one source, you're likely to be inclined in a certain direction. I watch Fox News, and I watch MSNBC, and I watch CNN. Okay, CNN brings it straight from wherever it is happening. But if you want to see a bunch of folks who are rallying like crazy for everything that this new administration is doing, tune into Fox tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Fox. I mean, Biden and Harris could not do anything right. Just negative, negative, negative. So we need to be careful and not just consume and not analyze where we're getting the information and why we're getting it from certain sources. I'm really disappointed that the Star Ledger went out of business, because it was the only statewide newspaper in the state of New Jersey. Now, if you're not willing to subscribe online, you can't get the Star Ledger, okay? Which forces you into a whole different type of process. But we really do, and if there's a way that we can support Black media, we need to do it. Because if we had, I was involved with WBLS when it was inner city broadcasting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that used to be the what's the theater over there? the where they used to have the the Amsterdam. Okay,
Yeah. Hmm.
that they used to bring the news from a black perspective. But guess what? Most of those stations were sold. BET was started by a black guy who sold it for billions and said, when we challenged him, why are we selling a black station? He says, listen, I was never into social work. I'm a businessman. I sold it because I got a lot of money. But we really have to be careful and headed toward the election in New Jersey. Believe me, we're going to be inundated, overwhelmed with misinformation, distortions, and just plain out lies. Because people, and I want people to hear this, there's only 2 states in the United States of America that will have gubernatorial elections this year: New Jersey and Virginia. And if you think that the wealthy people are not going to put a lot of money into trying to persuade, dissuade, and suppress the black vote, think again. They're going to put a lot of money. You've never seen so much money that's going to be spent in trying to get whoever they can get into. And I don't want to hear the other party saying that we didn't have enough money, because it's going to take legwork to really get to people who think their vote don't count. And I just really hope that when we conclude tonight, that nobody that's listening to this town hall meeting believes that their vote doesn't count, because it really does count. There are different ways that you can communicate with elected officials. One, you can telephone them. Two, you can email them. You can go and visit their office. Or if you find out that they are having a program, you can go there. But don't go there to be entertained. Go there and find out what they're doing that you want them to do, and have a voice to say, this is what we want you to do. I do not want my tax monies being spent to build bombs that's killing people in Palestine. I don't want that. But Cory Booker needs to know that. McIver needs to know that. And Andy Kim needs to know that. That's my personal point of view. But if you have a personal point of view, express it. You've got to talk to your elected leaders. Who are they? Your city council people. It's your mayor. It's the freeholders. It's the county exec. It's your assembly person. It's the senator. It's the governor, the lieutenant governor. All of these people, you have an opportunity to communicate your needs, your desires, and your likes and dislikes. I know, Pastor, I wanted to ask the folks on the call if I have given them everything that they asked for. And I expected folks to say, you didn't give me anything. And I was going to say to them, then I've given you 100% of what you asked for. If you didn't ask for anything and I didn't give you anything, you got what you asked for.
Right. Right.
I hope that message is clear.
It is. And I appreciate something that you said in there about the bomb dropping and building of bombs. And because all of this is intertwined, even those of you, and I really pray that it is all of us on some level. If you are involved in money market funds, stock markets, there is such a vehicle called ethical investments, where the money that you invest, the money that you might put in a mutual fund or whatever, is committed to only supporting financial vehicles that support humanity and that support moral issues. I'm not saying, obviously, they all don't, but if that's important to you, and I pray that it is, people listen when we put our money where our mouths are. Did I say that? Put your money where your mouth is. Yeah. When we put our money where our mouth is, people will listen. Sister Jazmine, where do y'all get what y'all know from?
Well, a little bit of here, a little bit of there. social media is clickbait. They will have a capture on whatever news outlet. Sometimes you're waiting for the shade room to drop something, spiritual word or whatever else it may be. But we have to be mindful that the clickbait is exactly that. A 2-line run-on sentence is not telling you the full story. This is where you have to dig deeper. This is where you have to find out the source. A lot of information. We're not watching the news. We feel as though it's too depressing. Why am I going to continue to watch something that's going to make me sad every day? So a lot of my generation does rely on social media. I do know people who will read a newspaper, but we also listen to the radio. We listen to podcasts. We get a lot of information from our podcasters, and then we Google a lot. So I think what we can do a better job of is have the conversations. I don't want to just have a conversation with me as an African American woman. I want to have a conversation with a Caucasian male, because the perspectives will be different. And then I can learn, and then I can take what they're saying, what he's saying, what she's saying. And now I can come up with, okay, well, this is what you said, but now I have to do the research. There's a lot of information that we just have to dig deeper in. We cannot be surface ready. We have to get down to the nitty gritty. And that's not just my generation. That's the older generation. That's the younger generation. We can't rely on AI or anything or anyone else. We have to do the work. And I think that that's critical right now, because we're seeing so many people that say, I'm going to put my hands up. I'm not going to do anything. That's not my problem. That's not my issue. But when it's knocking on your door, then what are you doing? Because now you don't have the resources. Now you don't know how to respond. Now you don't know how to fight. Now you don't know how to write a letter, because you never thought that it was going to happen to you. So you have to implement, you have to educate, and you have to practice it. It's all about doing the work. And it is terrible to see how our constitutional rights in terms of freedom of speech is being taken away from us, or attempting to be taken away from us. We have to put our support behind those in whom we support. The NBC, MSNBC, what they're doing to the African American, and there's a lot of women who have lost their platform. We have to support them. We have to, if they're having books releases, we have to buy the books. We have to find a way to support them and put funding back into their pockets, because they are the ones that's educating us. They are the ones that are giving us what we need and also preparing us for tomorrow. I think that that's critical. I think that we have to also find who's going to be their replacement. There's tons of great writers in Mount Calvary. We have youth who are, doing interviews. We have youth who are on their way to school. We have youth that may aspire to become the next Oprah Winfrey, the next journalist. We have to encourage them as they're young, so that they know that they have that platform. We don't have to wait until they're a seasoned saint. Support them as they're young, because that youth may have more withal or knowledge, or they may even be able to convey their message differently than how I am or how Dean Harris is. But we still have to be able to listen, and we have to be able to practice what we want. We are not waiting for anyone. We are not waiting for anyone. We are creating the tables. We are building the tables. We are decorating the tables, and we're going to eat at the tables that we create. But if you don't want to be at this table, then go find your own. But for those who do, we invite you. I challenge everyone to get 3 things in which you find to be important to you and dive in on it. Dive in, commit yourself to it. If it's voting, if it's education, if it's politics, commit yourself to 3 things until fall. We are at daylight savings was just yesterday. So for the next 6 months, commit yourself to something and educate yourself, educate others, but also practice it. We have to get out of the habit of being all talk. We got to do the work now, because the work needs to be done. It needed to be done, and it's going to need to be done tomorrow. It is up to us to do it, and we're not waiting for anyone. It is the message of this year. The theme of this year is we win, and we have to win by doing the work. It is not going to come to us. It is not going to fall into our laps. We are going to do the work, and we are going to do it well, and we are going to make sure that they know our name and they spell our name correctly when we do it.
There is, I'm proud to announce that we have literally one of our young people who came to me the Sunday that I called all the business folk up. She came to me so excited. She's literally working on an app and a directory of all, and this is one of our younger people. She's at most 33, and we are incredibly proud of her. And business owners, y'all will be on the lookout for that. We have to land this plane. We'll be back. A lot that we wanted to cover, but what we did cover was rich in content. Uh, Someone I just saw in the chat talked about understanding your opposition. Very good book, very old book. Uh, Take a look at a book called The Art of War.
Yes.
The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Read that book. It's not about Jesus. It's not about Donald Trump. It's about understanding. It's about wisdom and how you move, how we move in the days to come must be based on two things: what we know about God, what on three things: what we know about God, what we know about ourselves, but also what we know about the opposition. The opposition is real. It's in our faces. And saints, we're going to be all right.
Yes.
But I don't want to just be all right. If we have to go through this for 4 years, we come out 4 years later stronger than we are today. There's no reason for us, if you're afraid, you've already lost. But if we understand what we're in, what we're up against, now is the time to do it. This is the time to use faith and wisdom, saints. Brother Harris, Sister Jazmine, I thank y'all for everyone on tonight. Thank y'all. Send up some clapping hands for our facilitators tonight. We are so grateful for what they've shared, what they know. And listen, we got to come back. We'll be back. I'm going to commit and say we'll be back within the next 4 weeks. What you got there, Brother Harris?
I have obtained from the Essex County Clerk's Office a directory of the governments, every municipality in Essex County, and the address and phone numbers for all of our elected officials representing Essex County. And there will be copies of this at the church on Sunday and beyond. And we will also have voter registration forms for everybody at Mount Calvary Missionary Baptist Church for the foreseeable future.
Outstanding. And what we'll do is we will take that, brother Harris. We'll do a PDF and we'll even distribute it electronically.
And Pastor, if I can just say, if there's anyone that is watching right now and you do not know your local officials and you are interested in getting to know them, please drop it. I will be watching back on Facebook and on YouTube, and I am willing to help you in getting that journey process, to get that journey started. Because again, this is the time, this is the moment, and I can't let my peers not be able to feel as though they have a seat at the table. So if anyone needs assistance in contacting their local officials, I will try my hardest to connect them.
This is it. So we are ready to go. Well, let me put it this way. You may not feel ready to go, but the deal is we have to be on the move. We've done it before. We can do it again. Your voice is louder than you might think. Bullies are never strong. Bullies are never strong. It's all a deception. And all the stuff that we see, listen, the clock is ticking because sometimes, it's like spraying pesticide on a bunch of ants. When you spray it, you're going to kill all the ants. These folk are even going after the ones who put them where they are. And guess what?
That's right.
We're going to be all right.
All right.
Stay tuned, stay informed, stay woke,
Right?
stay on the wall. Black lives matter. Our brown brothers and sisters' lives matters. And
Yeah.
listen, let us be very clear. Just as we've always had, we've got some brothers and sisters of white skin that are just as committed to
Yeah.
this cause as we are.
Yes.
So
Amen.
what don't minimalize this. Don't minimize this to being all them against all of us, because frankly, all of us don't even think the same way. God bless you.
Right.
Thank you for joining our town hall tonight. Brother Harris, I can't thank you enough. Sister Parker, I can't thank you enough. Viewers, I can't thank you enough. Listen, this is remaining up on Facebook. This I want you to share it, invite others to watch it, and we're going to continue in talks and dialogues and preaching and teaching. Our theme right now of Nehemiah is right on point, and that's so incredible because God gave us that lesson long before this man and his friends made it into the White House. But that's what God does. Let us look unto the Lord. Eternal God, we again say thank you. We thank you, God, for our time together. We thank you for the outpouring of Sister Parker and Brother Harris, for their sharing of their wisdom, their experience, and their understanding of these times. God, you did not give us a spirit of fear. You have created us to be more than conquerors. So we stand on your word, we stand in your will, and we stand in your might. Bless every listener, bless every viewer, bless our communities. God, even bless those, keep those that others are trying to separate us from. Bless those, God. Keep us together. We defy, we overcome, we rebuke a spirit of bifurcation, but we declare community and unity amongst these, your people. God, together we are stronger. Divided we shall fall, but together we shall stand. Keep us now is your servant's prayer in the name of Jesus. And the people of God declared, Amen, amen, and amen. Good
Amen.
night. Again, thank you so much. Have a wonderful and blessed evening. And again, we'll be getting back together real soon. Brother Harris, Sister Parker, I'm going to say, let's do this within another 4 weeks. And I want to bring another even younger voice to the table. God bless you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Pastor, for your divine leadership and
God
courage.
bless you. God bless you, my friends. God bless you. Have a wonderful night. Thank you all for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Very good.